might be floating somewhere in the ocean, and I kind of think of it, it might be one giant message in a bottle. One day a ship will come by, pick it up, and they'll find what we wrote in there with our data detectors and our photographic cameras. This is rocket science. Come back to Earth, yeah. You'll hear it come out every so often. The project that we're doing is a multi-experiment project. The name of the payload is called PRIME, which stands for Project Imua Multiple Experiment. So there are 6 experiments on board, and each of the experiments is put together by one of the 4 different community colleges.
I became an electronic tech major, and I actually would have done anything just for the chance to do something with NASA. I decided that I wouldn't be able to do that because there weren't really any African Americans who were doing that, and so I was like, oh, that's not something I can do. And I remember the gentleman who took us in the machine shop, he said he started out as an electronic tech, which is where I'm at right now, a 2-year degree. And he's actually head of that division that actually mills, designs, and builds the rockets now.
These students put in 20, sometimes 30 hours a week on a project, and that's because this is real world to them. This is not just a classroom abstract situation.
It was the moment that we walked into the range control center. This is the telemetry room, this is photo, this is the angle, this is that. For the first time, I saw myself sitting in one of those chairs.
Integration basically means exactly what it says. You're taking your payload and you're putting it onto a set of rails that becomes the full canister of the payload, and you become integrated with all the other different experiments. After that, NASA then powers it up and does what's called a full mission simulation. And so it'll be powered up for a little over 5 minutes, going through a simulation of the actual flight.
Payload is ready on the pad, and we're ready to launch tomorrow.
We're really excited and hoping for launch tomorrow. They did say the weather looked really good.
This is the closest I've ever been to a rocket. I am standing next to something that is going up into space, people.
I mean, it's not good. Turn out well.
I'm Philip Eberspeaker, and I'm the chief of the NASA Sounding Rocket Program Office. Sounding rockets are solid propellant vehicles. We might actually fly higher than the space station's orbiting. However, we're not flying fast enough to achieve orbital velocities, so that's why they're called suborbital. They'll go up and come down. The difference between orbital and suborbital rocket flight is velocity. To be orbiting, like on the International Space Station, you need to be flying about 17,500 miles per hour in a horizontal direction. Ultimately, what's happening is you're flying so fast horizontally, as you fall towards the Earth, you keep missing it. A suborbital rocket at apogee, where it's flying horizontally, might only have 2,000 or 3,000 miles per hour, so it will not miss the Earth when it falls back towards it. So it's a suborbital trajectory, or actually a Earth-intersecting orbit. We use a Carrier booster motor, which is actually an old Navy rocket motor asset. And then on top of that is a Army asset. And then on top of that is the ignition system for the second stage, then the experiment section for the RockSat-X payload, then telemetry system, which radios the data back to the ground, the engine control system that orients the payload in space, and then a recovery system and nose tip on the front end. And we're talking vehicle costs of potentially less than $100,000, which relative to access to space is very inexpensive, and those surplus assets and our utilization of them enable this sort of educational mission.
We got here, completely fed every mosquito's lineage for a long time. It's gross.
When we got there at 7, we saw the clock running, and that was a very good sign. It means that we were on our way towards a launch.
At about T-minus 1 hour or so, another set of electrical checks to make sure everything's still healthy and the payload's working properly and the vehicle's ready to go. And then we really get excited about T-minus 12 minutes when we enter into what we call the hot count.
It's like a slingshot. And the first stage, you could see it just burning for just that 5 seconds, and then the anticipation because it shuts down, and now you're holding your breath for the second stage to come.
Look at that first H come down.
You see it where?
Right there, coming down. The smoke coming down.
1 minute.
It's just like one breath kind of thing that I got to see with something that we had worked on, I had helped work on. You know, I had touched, and it was on a rocket, and I could watch it going up.
So glad we got off. I will not be happy until the payload's at least on the deck of the boat.
As Phil said, I am not taking my hat off until that thing is in the boat. And they have not yet gotten eyeballs on the payload.
He came right out and just said, you know, the payload is lost, it's gone.
It's speculated that the chute did deploy but not fully deploy or became entangled, which then the velocity did not slow down. It hit the water at a high velocity. If you pull up the coordinates on a map, this is not in shallow water, it's deep. There's no chance of going after this in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So I kind of didn't know that was an option. I didn't think that could happen. I didn't know that was one of the possible risks. There was all this, the rocket might blow up, or we might not be able to launch because there'll be too many boats. But it hadn't been, we won't find the payload. So I don't know that I have a proper feeling because I didn't expect that to happen.
These students, they started a whole year ago, and you can't take away the fact that you wanted the payload to come back. We've lost that. I don't like to use the word failure. I like to use the fact that it's an incomplete mission. It's not like a pass-fail system. There are different shades of accomplishments that you do.
To say that it's a loss and it's horrible that the payload isn't recoverable like the whole experience was, is a disservice to the whole experience because we learned so much and we met all these amazing people and we get to see the flow of things and the whole nature of NASA and it's, you know, it's gears.
I'm moving forward. Failure is not an option.
It might be floating somewhere in the ocean, and I kind of think of it, it might be one giant message in a bottle. One day a ship will come by, pick it up, and they'll find what we wrote in there with our data detectors and our photographic cameras.